Hey, everybody. How are you? Welcome to Insight with Dr. Seth. I'm Dr. Seth, psychologist, and today, as always, we are going to gain insight into ourselves and others. We are going to try to better understand what makes us tick, what makes others tick. So today we're going to be talking about something that I think that a lot of people can relate to, and that is a particular personality type, a particular type of person, also a style of communication that some people engage in. And I am talking about passive aggressive people. Okay. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But first, let's just start with kind of a check in. How are you doing today? Where are you today on, let's start with the energy spectrum. Where are you on the energy spectrum? Are you low energy today, or are you feeling energetic and full of life? Are you feeling kind of somewhere in the middle? Where are you on the motivated spectrum? How motivated have you been feeling today so far? Really motivated, not so motivated, really kind of feel like you're dragging, or like you're doing okay. You've got your stuff that you know you've got to do today and you feel okay about it. And then lastly, check in. How's your mood? Where are you on the happy, unhappy spectrum? A lot of times we don't even stop to ask ourselves some of those most basic questions, but do that for a moment. Where are you on the happy or unhappy spectrum? Do you feel happy? Do you maybe feel a little unhappy or lonely or just kind of down or blue? Or do you feel kind of in the middle, like you're okay? Overall, you're okay. I think honestly, when we have moments or days where we are okay, we need to remember that is actually a good thing. Maybe just feeling okay is enough. Sometimes I think there is such this focus in our culture to be happy, with wide eyes and confetti shooting out of our heads all around us. And a lot of times it's TV or Hollywood movies that kind of make us feel like that's the goal. We should be that happy. But honestly, just feeling okay is a pretty good place to be. And that is something that maybe people come to understand, I wonder, when they're older. I'm just thinking if I were to interview, for example, a bunch of people in their 70s and 80s and 90s, and I were to ask them, what is your goal? Is your goal to be happy, or is your goal to just be okay? I have a thought. My guess would be that actually people who have lived more life and gone through so many different types of ups and downs that they will say to you, actually, the goal is to say, I am actually okay. Just some random thoughts to kind of start us out today. And before we go any further, why not? Let's do it. Wouldn't every day start better if we started with a deep breath? I'm going to do it right now myself. And a stretch while I accidentally almost knocked my lamp over here. It's funny. First of all, I love stretching, but I'm athletic, and I don't know, a lot of athletes will relate. Stretching really kind of can help even us out so much. But it's funny because when I mentioned breathing, one of the things that just came to mind is how short or deeply a person naturally breathes. So let me just kind of take a step back and explain why I'm thinking about this. I don't know if anybody listening read the Demi Moore memoir, her autobiography, the Demi Moore book called Inside Out. It was actually co-written by a woman named Ariel Levy. And actually, Ariel Levy is a New Yorker staff writer. And this book, I have to tell you, first of all, I'm sure some people listening read that Demi Moore book. It was a huge bestseller and read by hundreds of thousands or millions of readers. But anyhow, that I have to say is one of the most beautifully written books I have ever read. And I mean, it's one of those books, very seldom will I go back and read a book a second or a third time, but I'm pretty sure that I will go back and read that book again And what's interesting is I would say that I've always in my life, liked Demi Moore enough, but I had read a review that was saying what an amazing memoir this was, what a great story it was, and also how beautifully it was told. So I bought the book, and one does not need to be a fan of Demi Moore to appreciate this book. Part of it is she does have a very interesting story, and she talks about a lot of things that maybe people might not know, but the way this story is written, the writing, Ariel Levy did such a good job, and I'm sure Demi Moore's voice is in there as well. I would read certain paragraphs and just reread the paragraph, the way the words just kind of sung on the page, almost like melted my heart in some ways, some passages in the Demi Moore book. So I highly recommend that. I know how popular it was, and also the reviews of it. I love after I finish reading a book to go and read different reviews that other people, just regular people like myself, have written about it. And people were saying the same thing, the way that it was written, and, was really kind of breathtaking in some ways. Well, anyway, one of the parts of this book, I remember Demi Moore was talking about something that she learned over the course of her adult life, was that she learned, and I forget, she was maybe working with some sort of a coach or a therapist or something, but she learned that the natural way that she breathes is actually really short breaths in and out. And the goal, we do better and feel better, and we feel less anxious if we, as a rule, can find ourselves just regularly engaging in more deep breathing. So I say this all to say, I believe I am as well a very short breather. If I do not catch myself and focus myself, I just randomly, if you were to check my breaths, I think they'd be extremely short. And I wonder, think about your breaths. Are you somebody who might be too short of a breather? Short breath in and then immediately short breath out. Or when you breathe, do you breathe from a resting place of longer breaths in and out? People who I think feel a lot of anxiety, I tend to feel like I'm kind of wired anxiously. Well, I would ask myself, right? Am I wired anxiously, or is it partly because I just breathe too short breaths, because my breathing is just too short? So when I kind of said a moment ago, let's take a moment and do a long breath, those are good reminders for me, because as a short breather, I always need a reminder to take a longer breath and really kind of balance myself. And then also, one of the things that I really like to do and I find helps me is like those shoulder rolls, because it's amazing, isn't it? How much tension we can carry with us without knowing. All right, enough on that. Today is a mini episode, and in today's mini episode, I am going to share with you a segment from my YouTube channel, Dr. Seth, on passive aggressive personalities, and specifically 4 behaviors that a passive aggressive person tends to engage in that can be incredibly frustrating for the people closest to them, whether at home or work or in one's social life. And I think you'll understand better as you listen. I hope that you find this helpful. Take a listen. I'm going to talk, if you have been on the receiving end of it, you have probably found pretty annoying, and that is passive aggressive behavior. I have been a psychologist for over 20 years, and I can share this type of behavior is one of the things that bothers and frustrates people the most when someone engages in passive aggressive behavior. Why? Because the person isn't being direct and clear about how they feel and what they think and why they're upset. No, instead, they're doing these little frustrating, annoying things, often to try to show you they're upset. But because they won't acknowledge clearly and directly that they're upset, there's no good solution to come from it. So the whole situation is frustrating. Things get worse in the relationship. And what happens if you're on the receiving end? of too much passive aggressive behavior, you know it. You start accumulating the R word, the R word. So if you are on the receiving end for too long of too much passive aggressive behavior, you start feeling what? And it starts with an R. Resentful. You start feeling resentment. You start resenting the other person and having to be put in situations where they are upset and they are treating you unfairly. And because their communication style is so indirect, you're not actually able to communicate in a reasonable adult way. Very frustrating situation. So in this video, I'll just review briefly a few different passive aggressive behaviors that are some of the most common. And if you have someone passive aggressive in your life, you know exactly what this behavior feels like. Number one, passive aggressive comments. Little comments often that feel like little digs that they just get in there to try to ruffle your feathers, to try to get under your skin. Passive aggressive comments that they say to you that make you feel unsettled. So you're sitting there thinking, I don't know what to make of that, but I know if I think about it, that didn't feel good. That is exactly what it is designed to do, to unsettle you. These passive aggressive comments. It could be what feels like a weird backhanded compliment, saying something that kind of sounds like a compliment, but wait a minute, when you think about it, is it actually an insult? Another example of passive aggressive comments are little sarcastic comments that have a little bite to it, that feel like a little microaggression. The passive aggressive comments could somehow also just feel dismissive, little dismissive comments, little things like, if you care about something like that, or you would do something like that, little comments like that aren't really clear, but obviously are designed to sort of make you go, wait, did you just insult me? Those are passive aggressive comments. They're not clear, they're not direct, but they leave you feeling unsettled and frustrated. The second passive aggressive behavior that I want to talk about that's really common is withholding compliments or appreciation. So I'll give a few examples. One example would be, imagine you have spent hours working on a project that took you a lot of time and really was kind of a difficult project to do. You share that information with the other person and say, I just spent so long working on this. It was really difficult to do. I'm so glad it's done though. The other person you would expect will say something, oh, that's great you did that, or you must feel glad that you're done. They will validate you in some way, or they may congratulate you on putting in that effort and that time. They will often say something to make you feel good. Well, with the passive aggressive person, they hear you say that you just spent so many hours working on a project, and they know what you want. They know you want to be validated, or you want some sort of acknowledgement for that time that you spent, that's why you're telling them. The passive aggressive person isn't going to give it to you. They're not going to give it to you. They know exactly what you want. But a part of the passive aggressive response is to not give you what you want, to withhold that. They, again, know exactly what you want, but they will not give it to you. You're thinking, why wouldn't they give it to me? Why is it that difficult for them to acknowledge me? Why don't they want to feel happy for me? You're thinking, why are the littlest things in this relationship somehow these huge things I'm asking for? Anyone who's been in a relationship, whether at work or in their personal life, in their family or their romantic life, with someone who's passive aggressive, they have lived this pattern with this person, this withholding appreciation or compliments. It could be something as simple as something good happened to you. You got a promotion. Someone at work complimented you on your work. Someone in your personal life paid you a really nice compliment and shared that. And you shared that. with this person and let them know and felt so good about it. And we're telling this person so that you can feel connected with them. Well, again, they see you feeling good about yourself, and they're not going to add to that parade. They see you having a little party, and they're not going to come to your party. They're not going to allow you to feel even better in that moment than you already feel. And sadly, one of the things that passive aggressive people try to do, and a lot of times they're not even aware of this, is they're trying to take you down a notch. They see how good you feel or how good you want to feel, and they actually want you to feel worse a lot of times. That is a very common behavior of the passive aggressive person that you may have in your life. The third passive aggressive behavior I want to talk about is what I would call intentional forgetfulness. Intentional forgetfulness. So there may be something that you needed the other person to do for you, or you wanted the other person to do for you. You asked them to do for you. It could be something as simple as looking in an email for some information that you needed about something. It could be dropping off dry cleaning for you because you're too busy that day. It could be making a phone call that you asked them to make for you. Again, the littlest thing, sometimes something that could literally take between 1 and 5 minutes if we're really honest with ourselves. And well, the passive aggressive person will tell you later, oh, they forgot. They forgot. Really? Did they forget? If this is a pattern, a lot of times what the passive aggressive person is doing is they are showing you this behavior of intentional forgetfulness. But again, see, it comes back to this thread I was talking about earlier. They know what you want. They're just not going to give it to you. It's upsetting. Yes. If you're in a relationship with someone, family, personal, work relationship, and you keep being on the receiving end of this pattern, yeah, it's upsetting. It's upsetting. And the fourth and final passive aggressive behavior that I want to talk about in this video is intentional resisting or delaying things. Things that you need to happen, things that you want to happen, and intentionally resisting or delaying making the commitments for those things or making those things happen. Just intentionally dragging their feet. Again, a lot of times these things are really so easy to do and so quick. But the point is, the passive aggressive person knows that you want to do it, knows that you want it done, and knows that you will feel better after you have checked this off the list. Well, the passive aggressive person doesn't want to give you that sense of satisfaction. In fact, they often want to add to your own sense of frustration. That's why they keep delaying, keep resisting, committing to the simplest things that you want to do or you need to get done. It's a very, very frustrating behavior. If you as a pattern are on the receiving end of any of these passive aggressive behaviors, try to talk to the other person, name the problem, be gentle in your approach, do not attack, do not raise your voice, because people don't really hear other people when voices are raised. People will listen to another person talk about issues more likely when they seem calm, when they seem friendly and understanding, even if they're talking about something difficult. So try to talk about it. If it doesn't work, the next step is really for you to think about whether talking to a mental health professional would be helpful, where you can get some outside guidance on how to make this relationship better for your mental health, more workable for you. There's a particular type of therapy. It's called acceptance and commitment therapy, and it's called ACT for short. And one of the central components of this therapy is this idea of workability. So ACT therapy asks people, well, look at something going on in your life and ask yourself, is this feeling workable? Or actually, is this not workable? Is this not serving you in your life? You have tried to change it, but you actually don't have the capacity or ability to change another person's behavior. So being on the receiving end of this frustrating behavior from this other person, in this case, passive aggressive behavior, is this workable for you? Is this workable? as a rule in general in your life and going forward, if things don't change, is this workable? Think about that. That's one of the beauties of ACT therapy and something that it makes us take a step back and think about. And my suggestion to you is if you've tried to talk to the other person and it's not working, talk to a mental health therapist and they can help guide you and figure out what is workable for you in your life. All right? All right, everybody. I hope that you found that interesting and helpful. And who knows, maybe it triggered some thoughts or memories of relationships that you have with someone passive aggressive in your life. The goal. What is the goal for anyone? The goal is to learn how to communicate in a fair and honest and direct way. I always like to say it this way: firm but gentle. So when you want to assert yourself or need to assert yourself, when there's something that you need, assert yourself in a firm but gentle way. Be clear about it. Now, in order to not be passive aggressive, guess what you need? You need to be honest with yourself about how you feel. When you're angry about something, you need to be able to look in the mirror and say to yourself, no, it's true. I am angry. Or if you're sad or bitter or resentful about something, you need to start from the place of being honest with yourself that you are sad or bitter or resentful. And I think that is one of the places where passive aggressive people tend to get the most caught up is they miss that crucial step of being honest with themselves about how they feel. So what happens? It gets all screwed up, those negative feelings they have, and then it gets projected out and it just ricochets in these social interactions that end up causing a lot of havoc, a lot of frustration. And you know what? Cause the passive aggressive person and the person they're talking to be further and further apart emotionally. So nothing good comes from being passive aggressive. Now, here's what I would say as a psychologist: do I have empathy for someone who is passive aggressive? Here I am on the one hand saying I can understand how frustrating this situation can be, how infuriating at times this kind of behavior can be for other people. Well, can I feel that on the one hand and also have empathy on the other? The answer is yes. I do have some empathy for people who are passive aggressive. Why? Because people who are passive aggressive push other people away. And people who are passive aggressive, a lot of times, will feel like other people don't really like them. They will not feel liked. They will not feel a part of the club. And I think deep down, we're all little kids, and all we really want to do is feel liked and loved and welcomed and embraced. So when you have someone who's passive aggressive, yes, their behavior can be incredibly frustrating and can cause interpersonal problems. But at the same time, it's important to remember that they actually are doing things that lead to them feeling isolated later. What's sad is that this group of people often ends up feeling alone, misunderstood later, even though sometimes maybe they have frustrations themselves or anger or resentment about perfectly legitimate things. The problem is they go about dealing with those feelings or dealing with any issues in their life. They go about it in a way that doesn't serve them or anybody else. And they end up feeling isolated and alone. In that way, yes, I do have empathy for them. It's really important, I think, for all of us to take a step back and also gain that insight into the other side of what it's like, what the experience is like of being a passive aggressive person. All right. Well, I hope this mini episode has been interesting to you, got you thinking. Maybe you gained a little insight. I also want to do a shout out to next week's episode, a full interview. And I am so excited. I am interviewing an expert, an author on motivation, and specifically take some of the things that you want in your life. Maybe it's something in the future that you want for yourself, or maybe a current problem that you're struggling with now. And you know what you want, but you can't quite figure out how to get there. This general problem of motivation. How can we figure out what we want and get motivated more to achieve it? I have an expert who's going to be with us next week, and she is going to share the 411 or all the information you need on it. All right. See you next week. Have a good one, everybody. And don't forget, do me a favor and rate this podcast and subscribe. Have a good one, everybody.